Now, this is a story that the younger generation are going to have a hard time to believe. But back when I was a boy, we did a lot of shopping from the Sears and Roebuck catalog. And Sears and Roebuck back in those years had a grocery department. And that grocery department was listed in the catalog with illustrations and prices and all the specifications or details needed to make a decision as to what you wanted to buy. And Mother would always try to save a nickel and a dime here and there through a course of months. And she would have accumulated a little nest egg of money. And I remember her going through the Sears Roebuck catalog into the grocery section, and she would select a box of the windmill type cookie and another box of the ginger snaps. Now they didn't weigh a whole lot, and you could buy the box. I would say it was 2 feet long and 8 inches deep and 15 or 16 inches wide. It probably held 10 or 15 pounds of cookies. And Mother would make up an order. Sometimes it included clothing, and she always had these 2 boxes of cookies ordered in the fall of the year. And they being a dry type of cookie, they would last us for a long time in the winter months, and that's where we did our little, we'd do a little snitching every now and again and get an extra cookie. But I just thought I'd relate that so that the children would know now, with their convenience stores and everybody open 7 days a week at this time and in age and everything, that back when I was a boy, why, things had to be planned ahead of time, and there we were buying cases of cookies from the Sears and Roebuck catalog. And another thing too that I remember, and it was pretty much of a drudgery for me at that time, and that was to help Dad with our potato field. Dad worked for the Calumet and Hecla Mining Company, and they would try to take care of their employees and provide them with the means of having vegetable gardens. And they had a large tract of ground just in behind Grandpa Pellerin's home. And you were allocated a section of ground determined by the size of your family. I think ours was probably 50 by 100 feet in size, and you'd pay a small fee for the person that would come down there with the horses and plow. And they would prepare the soil for planting, and Dad would purchase a bushel or a bushel and a half of seed potatoes. And he was very exacting as to how these potatoes were to be cut into sections, that they had a seed eye in each section. And we had some sort of a potato planter, which was a spade-like device with a wire basket attached to it. And my job was to walk alongside of Dad. Dad had the potato rows arranged with chalk line or something to maintain a straight line, and he would push this planter down into the ground maybe 5 inches deep, and my job was to drop a potato in there. Every time he planted the instrument down into the ground, I would drop the potato in there, and then he'd pull it out and step on the ground to seal the potato in location, and that was potato planting. That wasn't too bad. But then when the potatoes came up, we had potato plants, and with potato plants you had potato bugs. And my job was to go down there once a week and pick potato bugs off the plants. If you looked under the leaf of the plant, you'd find a little raft of eggs, and then of course the adult potato bug was eating up all the foliage off the plant. And I'd have to go down there. Dad would give me like a pint bottle of kerosene and a 2-pound lard pail, and then another small container, and I'd go along and pick all the potato bugs that I could find, putting them in the small can, and then when the can would fill, I'd go over to this 2-quart bucket and pour them in there, and when we went over the whole field, we'd have probably a quart of potato bugs in there. and then we'd put this pint of kerosene in on top of them and set a match to it, and we'd have a good old roasting of potato bugs. That was one way of getting rid of them. We never thought of the idea of trying to dig a deep hole and bury them, because we thought maybe they would lay a raft of eggs or there'd be some sort of a nuisance for us, so we disposed of them by killing them that way and burning them with kerosene. And then I can remember Dad also, later in the year, these plants were coming into blossom, and Dad would get the substance known as Paris green, which was an insecticide, and you'd have to mix that with cold water, and Dad would have an old whisk broom, and he'd mix up a batch of that, and we'd go down to the potato field, and Dad would have that in an open bucket, and he'd dip the whisk broom in that, and then he'd whip the broom in such a way that the water would spray from the broom onto the plants, and we were trying to control our insect problem that way too. And then in the fall of the year, when the potatoes were ripe, the stalks were brown and drooping to the ground, then we had the chore of digging them out, and that was Dad's work because it was quite heavy, and he didn't want to trust us kids in setting the spade down into the ground at the base of the plant, because he was afraid that we'd be cutting potatoes in half. So he'd dig the potatoes out, and they would lay on the ground for an hour or so to dry, and then we'd pick them up and place them in gunny sacks. And I can't remember the means we had of transporting them home, but it must have been by wheelbarrow. And we'd have anywhere from, I would say 25 bushel of potatoes, and they were stored in our basement of the home. It being just a cavity under the house with sand floor and sand walls, there wasn't any problem for Dad. Dad would partially bury these potatoes in the cool sand, and we'd also have turnip down there, rutabaga, and we would dig them out of the soil as we needed them, and it was surprising how well they were preserved there through the winter months.